Hello class, it's Mr. Thomas. This is our nitrogen cycle review. This is part 3 of our nitrogen cycle notes. And we're going to add a little bit to our notes, but not that much. Primarily, this last video is going to review the overall cycle. But I'd like you to, if you could, grab some colored pencils, just a few of them, so that you could take some notes with some color and add a little bit more detail to the drawings that we made. So we made a large nitrogen cycle diagram, and I want you to kind of review. The first thing we said, nitrogen is fixed from the atmosphere with lightning. Okay, so lightning strikes it in the sky, and we have N2, which is atmospheric nitrogen, that falls to the ground, and that process we call fixation. Also, this occurs with lightning and legumes. So 3 L words: lichen, lightning, and legumes all start with L, and we have each one of those involved in fixation. Now, something that I neglected to tell you in our notes is that this nitrogen that goes into the ground needs to be nitrified. Okay, so in order to become NO3, it goes through the nitrification process. So write nitrification next to NO3. So realistically, it becomes, I should probably take this little arrow away, the atmospheric nitrogen becomes NH3, and that becomes NO2, and then it becomes NO3, where it can be assimilated into the ground. So I'm going to circle this in blue, the nitrification process, okay? This is nitrification. And it's the same process that we have down here, okay, that I emphasize. And you really need to memorize this. It's something you can practice over and over again, saying NH3 becomes NO2, becomes NO3, or ammonia becomes nitrite, which becomes nitrate, okay? So each one of these, again, the chemical name is nitrate for NO3, nitrite is NO2, and ammonia is NH3 plus here. So each one of those chemical configurations of nitrogen is important, but when it's fixed, and again, we're looking at fixation over here, or with the soybeans, it's fixed in a way that it starts as ammonia and goes to nitrite and nitrate, and then is assimilated into plants through the roots of plants, and technically this would be nitrification here too. So and bacteria is what's driving that, okay? And that is, I'm just going to make a note down here, that's nitrification as well, in blue. So you know that that occurs as well in the soil, okay? So that usable form of nitrate helps plants grow, like legumes or any crop. We could be talking about corn, and animals consume that through consumption, and it gets into their bodies. And I just wanted to point out, while these notes are being recorded, that that's how we get our nitrogen as well. In fact, we can eat something that's eaten a plant. So this cow, hamburger, or steak, when we eat it, we get nitrogen. That's where we get our protein, okay? So this is protein, and the building blocks of protein that you should know about are amino acids. Now, what does that sound like? Amino acid. Well, guess what? The root word amino sounds like ammonia, and that's right, that's nitrogen, okay? That's food that gives us protein, is animal product and animal muscle tissue, and that helps to build our muscles, okay? Now, I always ask people in class, if you're a vegetarian, well, then where do you get your protein? Because you're not eating meat. Well, there's, of course, dairy. We could take some milk, okay, or make cheese or something like that. But again, we know some people don't prefer not to have dairy as well. And where do they get their source of protein? Well, the answer to that would be right here, okay? Vegans, or people that don't eat any animal products whatsoever, meat or otherwise, they get their protein from legumes, okay? So soy-based material like tofu, or another legume that's popular is peanuts, okay? Peanut butter. And that's another animal-based protein. So protein can also come from legumes, and we consume that as well. And that gets taken into our kidneys, and ultimately we have nitrogenous waste as well. That is scat, okay? Again, it starts with an S, it ends with a T, it comes out of you, it comes out of me. I know what you're thinking, but it's not that. Let's be scientific and call it scat. Nitrogenous waste, ammonia, like I said, is toxic, but very quickly bacteria eat that and convert it into nitrite, and another form of bacteria converts it into nitrate. That is useful in this nitrification process that we outlined in blue for fertilizer. It's essentially fertilizer. Now, the Haber-Bosch process is another form of fertilizer, and I'm just going to color my tractor green here again. We mentioned briefly in part 2 of the notes that the Haber-Bosch process was revolutionary, and basically, and I'm not just saying that word revolutionary as a metaphor. It actually, we had a green revolution right after the war because dynamite was used to make nitroglycerin, and they wanted to take that nitrogen and use it to help out with agriculture. So agriculture had a green revolution in which the Haber-Bosch process converted atmospheric nitrogen into synthetic fertilizer, and that was used to really upscale farming practices, to really enrich the soil and help in many ways. But of course, that created an overabundance and a reservoir that oftentimes led to things like water quality issues, and that's where we started talking about runoff, okay? And again, just to highlight what we already talked about, nitrification occurs in a lake or freshwater ecosystem as well. We see many nutrients down there in underwater, and nitrate helps for plant growth. But when we have eutrophication, we have a mat of algae that kind of grows on top of the water, okay? And we have all this plant material on top, duckweed and algae, and it's almost like a mat, okay, of algae on top, and no sunlight can really get through the water, okay? It's, in fact, all the plants below die, and that's what we call, or I should say leads to hypoxia, because the plants produce oxygen, as you know, through photosynthesis, and if sunlight isn't being added to our freshwater ecosystem, the oxygen levels go down and the fish die, and we have really what we call artificial eutrophication, and that's an overabundance or excess of nutrients. So I'm going to write nutrients in parentheses here. We're almost done with the nitrogen cycle now. We've kind of covered everything, but one thing I neglected to tell you that's really, really important is how does nitrogen get back into the atmosphere? Okay, well, to talk about this, nitrogen that's in the soil is put back into the atmosphere in a process, okay, called denitrification. Okay, so go ahead and jot that down. Denitrification. Kind of bad, I'm on the spine of my notebook here. Denitrification, okay? And this is when bacteria pushes the nitrogen that's in the ground back into the atmosphere. So there is, again, we have bacteria that will denitrify the soil and pull it back into the atmosphere. And the same thing happens here, I guess, if more space here. We call this, we'll just label it over here, N2, as that's atmospheric nitrogen, and we've got denitrification occurring there, okay? More space to write, that's good. So you can see, once again, atmospheric nitrogen is supplied by the bacteria that's taking it out of the soil.